This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Susie Garrett. Brought to you by
TheStreet.com, interactive financial multimedia tools for an ever-changing financial world. Our dividend stock advisor guides and helps generate income during a period of low interest rates. Real Money helps you think through ideas for investing and trading stocks. Action Alerts Plus is a charitable trust portfolio that provides trade-by-trade strategies. Online, mobile, social media. We are TheStreet.com.
Realty check. Home prices are jumping, but so are mortgage rates. And with supply tight, what's a buyer to do?
Trapped. Imagine being held hostage by your own employees at your own company. That's exactly what's happening to an American businessman in China.
Food fight. Would you eat foods knowing they're made from genetically altered seeds? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that finds itself at the center of an even bigger controversy. We have all that and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Tuesday, June 25th.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bill Griffith in for Tyler Matheson this evening. American consumers, well, they're feeling more confident these days. Pretty surprising, given the turmoil and the uncertainty in the stock market recently. For the third straight month, a closely watched confidence index rose sharply, hitting a 5-year high. The Conference Board said today that its survey shows people are feeling better about their jobs and their financial situations, and that confidence is also showing up in the housing market. Sales of new homes rose more than 2% in May to the highest level we've seen since 2008, and home prices jumped a record 12% in April, according to the latest S&P Case-Shiller index of 20 cities. That positive mood carried over to the markets as well. The Dow rose more than 100 points. The Nasdaq added 27, and the S&P was up almost 15 today.
Well, with all that enthusiasm in the housing market come new concerns. There's a shrinking supply of homes on the market, and mortgage rates are edging up too. Diana Olick takes a look at how all those changes are impacting home buyers.
So I was 1027.
A few months ago, the Diedrichs family sold their home in Menifee, California, and it could not have gone better.
We listed our home for one weekend and we had 20 offers, and they ended up offering 20 over asking, so it was great.
But the tables have turned on this family of 5 who are in a temporary rental.
Is the refrigerator included?
Now they are the buyers facing a sudden spike in both home prices and mortgage rates.
I'm afraid we're going to miss the boat. I feel like if we might get priced out of the market in a few months, and just depending on the mortgage payment, whether we could afford it if the interest rates go up much more.
Mortgage rates are up a full percentage point since the beginning of May, with huge jumps in just the past 2 weeks. This as home prices in the nation's top 20 markets saw record moves higher between March and April and double-digit gains from a year ago.
We've had people calling in tears saying, oh my gosh, I have to lock in a rate right now. And so the people who have been on the fence, some of them have stepped back, but some of them have jumped off the fence in the other direction and really want to buy a home before rates go up further.
And home sellers have seen a swift change as well, as rising rates chip away at purchasing power.
It eliminated a couple of people who were highly interested in buying, and so there's been a lot of anxiety, I think, associated with it.
All the housing numbers lately, sales, prices, and supplies have been pretty bullish, but they've also been backward-looking before the spike in rates. As investors move out of housing, regular buyers are moving in, and they rely on mortgages. Affordability is still good now, but unlike the rest of the market, it is falling fast. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Diana Olick in Washington.
Also on the housing front, a bipartisan group of lawmakers introducing a bill to shut down government-run mortgage guarantors Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They propose replacing them with another federal reinsurer designed to backstop more private money in the event of another housing crisis. Republican Senator Bob Corker is one of the bill's sponsors and says there's an appetite to get this done.
I think everyone knows that Fannie and Freddie, the way they were set up with private gains and public losses was not a fair deal for taxpayers. This is a change that keeps the liquidity in the market. Hopefully we'll be successful. I do think there's energy here in Congress to take this on, and hopefully we'll do something that certainly moves us away from the status quo.
You'll remember that bailing out Fannie and Freddie during the height of the financial crisis cost American taxpayers more than $187 billion.
Also in Washington, the Senate is a step closer to a final vote on that comprehensive overhaul of the nation's immigration laws after passing a key hurdle Monday evening. A bipartisan majority approved a compromise measure that beefs up border security, paving the way for final passage, which could come as early as Wednesday. Republican Senator John McCain, who's voting for final passage of the overhaul, he appealed to business leaders for their support.
I have heard of a lot of commitments on the business community, whether it be high tech or others, that frankly I haven't seen the results of their commitments yet. So I hope that they will understand how important it is for them to be involved.
If the bill clears the Senate later this week, it's expected to, then it heads to the House, where it is expected to face significant hurdles from conservative lawmakers.
The Senate also confirming a new Secretary of Commerce. Chicago billionaire Penny Pritzker was elected to the post by a 97-1 vote. She's been a longtime supporter and fundraiser for President Obama.
And a major speech from the president today calling for new legislation to combat climate change. Besides the expected calls for renewable energy and limits on dangerous emissions, Mr. Obama revisited the contentious political debate over the Keystone Oil Pipeline. Eamon Javers has more on that.
Under a scorching sun at Georgetown University, President Barack Obama called for sweeping regulatory changes to deal with global climate change, including telling the EPA to establish carbon pollution standards for both new and existing power plants.
As a president, as a father, and as an American, I'm here to say we need to act. I refuse to condemn your generation and future generations to a planet that's beyond fixing.
The president's plan includes making up to $8 billion in loan guarantee authority available to efficiency projects. He'd also direct the Department of the Interior to permit wind and solar renewable programs on public lands to power more than 6 million homes by 2020. And he said he'd only authorize the controversial Keystone Pipeline if building it generates fewer greenhouse gases than the alternative.
Dirty energy's got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho.
But some environmentalists rallying in the nation's capital today want more.
He's taken some baby steps. He's got to take some giant steps.
Business advocates said the president's plan risks American jobs. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce said the president's plan runs a serious risk of punishing Americans with higher energy bills, fewer jobs, and a weaker economy, while delivering negligible benefits to the environment.
I have 6 children. I have a husband. I need to run my home. I don't want high utility bills.
But the president said critics have been wrong before.
What you'll hear from the special interests and their allies in Congress is that this will kill jobs and crush the economy and basically end American free enterprise as we know it. And the reason I know you'll hear those things is because that's what they said every time.
Tellingly, the president's plan revolves around executive action, and those are things that he doesn't need approval from a reluctant Congress to actually accomplish. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Eamon Javers in Washington.
Turning now to our market focus, we begin with a management shakeup at the world's largest cruise ship company. The CEO of Carnival Cruise Lines is out. Mickey Arison had been running Carnival for 35 years, but he'll still stay on as chairman. The change comes after a series of mishaps involving Carnival ships, from the Costa Concordia to the Triumph. Also today, Carnival reported better than expected earnings, but said bookings and prices for the rest of 2013 are lower than last year. But despite all that mixed batch of news, Carnival shares rose 5% to $34.89. Walgreens reported earnings that missed analyst estimates. The nation's largest drugstore chain cited a weak economy, declining customer traffic, and sluggish non-pharmacy sales. To reverse the trend and get more people back in the stores, Walgreens said it's changing its pricing and promotional strategy. The stock closed at $45.22, down almost 6%. Barnes & Noble reported another quarter of weak results, much worse than Wall Street expected. The bookstore chain said sales of Nook devices dropped 34% and ebooks fell 9%. As a result, the company plans to end the manufacturing of its own tablets in favor of a co-branded devices made by a third party. At the close, shares fell more than $3 to $15.61. That's a drop of almost 17%. Bill?
Meantime, a good day for Pandora shareholders. The online radio company said that its service is now available in more than 100 car models. That doubles the number from a year ago. Overall, more than 2.5 million listeners use Pandora in their cars now. Shares rose 8% today to $16.41. And the board at Men's Wearhouse is now offering a few more insights into last week's termination of George Zimmer, the founder, executive chairman, and basically the face of the company. According to the board, Mr. Zimmer wanted to take the company private, and he raised concerns over CEO Doug Ewert's compensation. That stock ended up more than 5% today to $37.13. And Sprint Nextel shareholders have overwhelmingly approved that company's $21.6 billion deal with Japan's SoftBank. About 80% of the shares were voted in favor of the deal. It ends a drawn-out fight for the third largest U.S. carrier between SoftBank and Dish. Now, just one more hurdle remains. That's the approval from the FCC, which is expected in July. Sprint finished the day fractionally higher at $6.88.
Yahoo shares surged almost 4% as CEO Marissa Mayer delivered a strong report card at the company's shareholder meeting today. Since Mayer took over as CEO about a year ago, Yahoo stock has surged 60%. So, how do shareholders think she's doing? And what do they think about her vision for Yahoo? John Fort has more.
It's been quite a year for Yahoo and new CEO Marissa Mayer. And today she made the case to investors that the internet giant is finally back on track. At the annual shareholder meeting in Silicon Valley, Mayer emphasized the idea that better products will bring in more advertisers who will spend money to reach Yahoo customers. To show that Yahoo's on the way toward delivering those results, Mayer had 3 product managers take the stage and do demos and offered stats to suggest they're well on their way. Flickr photo uploads have increased 300% since the service moved to a free terabyte of storage. Shareholders at the meeting offered positive reviews.
They've re-energized the company, the products, the demos that were done were really on target to show that.
I think the most important thing they're doing is hiring and inspiring talent.
What do we want? Free speech! And when do we want it?
Now! Not everyone who came to the meeting was a shareholder. A group of former Walmart employees protested that retailer's treatment of striking workers who are trying to unionize. Mayer is on the Walmart board.
We want her, when she goes to the board meeting, she could sit and say, hey, this is what's going on in Walmart Associate. They're having a lot of complaints. Let's see what we could do.
Mayer tried to keep the focus on what Yahoo has to do if it's going to grow. Mobile analyst Rocky Agrawal said she still has her work cut out.
I would say for PR, she's done a fantastic job. That's an A. In terms of really moving the company forward, I think it's probably a C with judgment to be really reserved. There's been a lot of flashy stuff like acquisitions, but there's still a lot of nuts and bolts, blocking and tackling that's not being done.
For now, investors are happy. The stock's up better than 60% since Mayer took over about 11 months ago. For Nightly Business Report, I'm John Fort.
Still ahead on the program, an American business executive held hostage in China by his own employees. It's a story you don't want to miss. But first, let's get a check on the international markets for today.
As you know, concerns about a credit crunch in China has led to a sharp sell-off in the Chinese stock market over the last few days. It's fallen to a more than 4-year low. Well, now China's central bank is trying to calm investors. The People's Bank of China is now promising it will not tighten the rules for banks too much as it tries to curb private bank lending in order to shore up economic growth.
We all know about the challenges of doing business in another country, dealing with foreign governments, exchange rates, and different regulations. But what about the boss being taken hostage? Well, that's happening right now to an American in China. Eunice Yoon has more.
It's not often you're a prisoner in your own company, but that's what's happening to Chip Starnes. The American CEO of Specialty Medical Supplies has been held captive at his factory in China since last Friday by workers who've been with him for nearly a decade.
Did you ever think you'd be in this situation with so much experience in China?
No, absolutely not.
Starnes is at the center of a worker revolt, not uncommon for China, but rare for an American boss. With wages here rising, the 42-year-old decided to move part of the business to India. He laid off 35 workers, paid them severance, but then rumors started he was closing the factory, which he says he was not.
They're demanding full severance pay, but they still have a job. And that's the problem.
The workers won't let Starnes out, but they would let us in.
I just thought I'd have maybe a little more support on the outside from the local government or something to say this isn't the right way how to get something done.
Do you plan to keep this business in China?
I mean, yes. I mean, I was operational 7 days ago.
So the workers are saying that Mr. Starnes actually isn't being detained here. They say that he's free to walk around the grounds, but that's very different from being held hostage.
Not to Starnes.
First couple of days were very, very tough. Nothing physical, more mental type of stuff going on. Standing around you, anywhere you walk, 14, 16, 18 people following you.
His lawyers are negotiating. So far, no deal.
What's the first thing you're going to do after you get out of here?
First, I just want to take a shower and shave. I'm only 42, but I know I'm looking a lot older than I am. I'm solid grim.
Holed up in his Chinese factory.
The president of the American Chamber of Commerce said that these types of situations where there are hostage takings actually happen on occasion, but are very rare, and made a point of saying that this is not a major problem for the international business community. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Eunice Yoon in Beijing.
Think about that. Hostage taking happens from time to time. Would that
Can you imagine happening in the United States?
I could not.
And you don't see any security officials there.
And look how much they were taking it in stride as well. It's almost like, don't take this personally.
I mean, is this just like a strike by a union and you go back to work and it's just business as usual?
Crazy.
To be continued.
Yes.
Well, Weil Gotshal, one of the most prestigious law firms in the country, announced massive layoffs this week, saying it was essential to retain its, quote, historic profitability in the new normal. Well, what does this mean for the legal profession? Joining us now to talk about this, Stephen Harper. He's law professor at Northwestern University and author of The Lawyer Bubble, A Profession in Crisis. Stephen, let me just ask you, during the financial crisis, we saw Wall Street firms and big banks scaling back. We saw in corporate America a lot of big firms also cutting back and making changes. And it seemed like the legal profession was somewhat unscathed until now. Is this just a short-term problem for Weil Gotshal as one law firm, or do you see fundamental changes coming to the profession?
I think the answer is both. There are some unique things about Weil. Over the last few years, it benefited greatly from some enormously lucrative bankruptcy matters, including Lehman Brothers, for example, that allowed it to really thrive in various areas of its business. And as those large bankruptcy matters have winded down, I suspect they're finding themselves with, well, I don't suspect, it seems clear they're finding themselves with not enough work for the people who no longer have that work to do. But there is something broader happening in the profession. And that has to do with the evolution of the profession from what, at least historically, has been a collegial profession, as distinct from what it now is becoming, at least in the big law segment, which is a collection of short-term profit-maximizing businesses. Yeah,
we don't often think of the law industry in profit and loss terms. It's more about winning and losing cases. But you made an intriguing point there. There's not as much business. Are we less of a litigious society now?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Exactly.
I think what's happening...
This is ironic, isn't it?
No, well, it's ironic in some ways, although it's predictable in others. There have been tremendous changes. Technology, for example, has made changes in terms of the kinds of things that you no longer need lawyers to do. If I'm a client and I can have a choice of either running a computer program to separate out some documents or paying some associate who's right out of law school $300 or $400 an hour, it becomes a pretty easy choice. So you have that sort of thing happening. But then you also have, I think, a different kind of attitude that is set in that has to do with what's happening in terms of the way people are choosing to lead their firms. And it's not uniform, it's not universal. There are firms that are exceptions, but the prevailing model is one that really is focused on short-term thinking. And as you mentioned, Bill, in an era where there's big law firms in particular, in terms of the high end, although there's lots of litigation and we're a litigious society, the demand for high-end work has actually been flat for the past several years. And in that climate, law firms are trying to essentially buy top-line revenue growth by rating each other's partners. So that creates a further need to make sure that you are continuing to have, lots of profits for your firm and your partners, so you can attract that kind of talent.
Stephen, you were a practicing attorney at a prestigious firm in Chicago for many, many years, I think 30 years, and you've written a critical book about the profession, and yet now you are a law professor. So what do you tell your law students who are aspiring attorneys? Choose another line of work?
Yeah, well, the ones that I teach as an adjunct in the Northwestern Trial Advocacy Program, there isn't a lot to tell them because they're already there. So all I can do for them and what I've been doing in the 15 or 20 years that I've been part of that program is to try to help them develop the best possible advocacy skills. The other course that I teach, though, is at the undergraduate level, where students are tracking themselves. It's an advanced seminar. They're tracking themselves into law school, but without any real clear notion of why or what it'll mean or what the career really will be. And, the media images from Alicia Florrick at The Good Wife, I mean, who wouldn't want to lead that kind of life? Right. But that's what frames a lot of expectations of these undergraduates. So.
Well, you've given us a good picture, a snapshot of what's ahead. Thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on the program. Stephen Harper.
Thanks for having me on.
Professor at Northwestern.
You bet. Coming up, genetically altered seeds. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, but now there's a growing movement to have them banned. And what happens next could have wide-ranging implications. We'll get to that. But first, a look at how commodities and treasuries and currencies fare today.
The Federal Reserve Bank of New York is not happy, and that's because $1.2 million that was en route to the bank from Switzerland is now missing. The FBI, along with local officials in New York City and Zurich, say the money disappeared somewhere between being put in the cargo area of a flight that left Zurich on Saturday and when it landed later at New York's JFK Airport.
Well, there's something else that appears to be missing. That's car payments in some areas. Credit rating agency TransUnion says that more Americans are falling behind on their auto loan payments, and it's blaming a rise in subprime borrowers. But the company says the delinquency rate right now is still a lot better than it was a year ago at this time.
And finally tonight, there's a growing food fight over the safety and transparency of genetically modified grains in what we eat. While some genetically altered seeds and plants have been consumed here in the U.S. for years, other countries ban so-called GMO foods, despite increasing demand for more efficient and drought-resistant crops. Jane Wells has more on this controversy.
A multi-billion-dollar industry is based on a kernel of controversy.
We need to feed 9 billion people in this world. We need to do that on less land.
American agriculture depends on genetically modified seeds. For 17 years, they've allowed farmers to grow more with less, credited with saving farmers during last year's drought. But so-called GMO seeds are banned in parts of Europe, and they face a growing protest movement in the U.S.
With all the chemicals and things in your food, do we need something else that we're not sure about,
I think it's a basic right to know what you put in your mouth. In your body.
In all of the years of genetically modified foods, there's still not a single documented case of harm to any human or animal from their consumption.
And so you can see how the leaves are beginning to burn.
Scientists who work for seed giants are starting to speak out.
What worries me the most is when we restrict access to technologies that are actually planet preserving.
At Pioneer, owned by DuPont, research fellow Renee Lafitte is testing 200 new genetic traits for drought-tolerant corn.
I, as a consumer, am much more worried about excessive use of pesticides, about excessive use of fresh water. And so those, to me, are greater environmental concerns and even health concerns around agriculture than are GMOs.
The biggest player and the biggest target is Monsanto, where seeds were a $10 billion business last year. Marches have been organized against the St. Louis company. Unapproved Monsanto GMO wheat recently showed up in a farm in Oregon under what the company calls suspicious circumstances. Yet Monsanto's chief technology officer just won the World Food Prize for pioneering work with GMO soybeans.
It's time for a new, fresh conversation around that balancing act between the demand for food and the tools and technologies that we use to meet that demand.
But farming and politics don't always mix. 8 countries in Europe have banned GMO products, but Brazil and Argentina are embracing them, and China has just approved Monsanto's new GMO soybean seeds. Still, many American consumers are skeptical. Several states are passing measures to label GMO foods, even though such a law failed in California. Ken Onedo switched to GMO corn 2 years ago to cut down spraying near conventional tomatoes and wine grapes.
Well, we're still spraying, we're spraying with Roundup, but instead of using chemicals that were a little bit harsher on the environment, harsher on our people, we're able to use a little softer materials and safer stuff.
But if labeling happens and he can't sell his corn, Onedo says he'll have to switch back. For Nightly Business Report, Jane Wells, Woodland, California.
And that's Nightly Business Report for tonight. I'm Susie Garrett. Thanks for watching. Great having you, Bill.
Always great to be here. I'm Bill Griffith. Tyler Matheson will be back tomorrow night, though. Have a great evening.
Nightly Business Report has been brought to you by
TheStreet.com, interactive financial multimedia tools for an ever-changing financial world. Our Dividend Stock Advisor guides and helps generate income during a period of low interest rates. Real Money helps you think through ideas for investing and trading stocks. Action Alerts Plus is a charitable trust portfolio that provides trade-by-trade strategies. Online, mobile, social media, we are TheStreet.com.
I'm Susie Garrett with a Nightly Business Report news brief. Stocks soared today on strong economic data reports. Sales of new homes rose 2% in May, hitting a 5-year high, while home prices jumped a record 12% in April. Also boosting the markets, orders for durable goods last month rose more than expected, and consumer confidence for June is sitting at a 5-year high. On Wall Street, the Dow rose more than 100 points, the Nasdaq added 27, the S&P up almost 15 points. The New York Federal Reserve Bank says $1.2 million in cash is missing from a flight out of Switzerland. The Senate approved longtime Obama supporter Penny Pritzker as the new Secretary of Commerce. And Sprint shareholders overwhelmingly approved a merger with Japan's SoftBank. Be sure to tune into Nightly Business Report right here on your public television station.